there. If I grow my organism in a screen house, for example, I'm not expected to be able to find so much microorganism like somebody who is planting in a public place where people can poo or wee there. What are the factors that can influence the presence of microorganisms in our food? There are different factors that can, influence the presence of different microorganisms in food. Some important genera that are known to occur in food are influenced by one, the general environment, just like I've just finished discussing, from which the food was originally obtained, like I told you. If, for example, we killed a cow in a neat and enclosed place, and they caught it using a clean table, it's different from the meat that I will buy from maybe Agege market or Bariga market, where the men are talking, the table that they are using every day continuously is what they are using, and there are flies up and down the place. They even use their hand to blow their nose and then use it to rub their cloths, their trousers, and place their hand back on the meat. So the kind of meat that I will buy from the store, where they actually kill it within an enclosed place, not the one they went to Agege to carry and then carry back into the store. The same thing with your plants, your vegetables, your fruits, depend on where you are getting it from. So the general environment from which your food was originally obtained will determine the kind of microorganisms and the number of organisms that will be found on that food. It also depends on the microbiological quality of the food in its raw or unprocessed state, like I explained for the vegetable. A vegetable that is already contaminated from the farm, what do you expect when you get to your house or to your kitchen? You now have to look for a means of decontaminating it or sterilizing it before you eat. That is why if I go to the market and I buy carrots or any of my vegetable, what I do first is to use either vinegar or salt to scrub it, then leave it in that water for 2 or 3 minutes, allow it to be able to sterilize it and rinse it with clean water before I can eat. But if you go outside the country, the way they even package the food, it is already cleaned, it's already packaged. You can just open it and eat directly without any problem. So it depends on the microbiological quality or state of the food when it is still raw or processed. It also depends on the sanitary conditions under which the food product is handled and processed. Like I just told you about the handlers of meats. Even vegetable, the malams in the market, sometimes you see them, they bring out sputum and spit it. They use their hand to clean their nose, some use their hand to pick their nose, some scratch their head. And you can imagine when they go to the toilet without washing with soap, they still handle these things. So it depends on the food handler and the process which they use. Sometimes you see the very dirty water they are using to wash it, and then you wonder. And you have watched, I'm sure you have watched so many TikTok that is showing us how some people will take water from the gutter to wet the food, or they use urine to wet it. We don't know how true it is. So the best thing is for you to treat all the food as if they are not clean, so that you can get appropriate clean, you can clean it appropriately. All right, so the adequacies, another point is the adequacies of subsequent packaging, handling, and storage condition in maintaining the flora at a low level. So having said that, okay, in this part of the world, where you get the food from, it is not hygienic. What do you now do to the food when you bring it to your house? Or what do you do to the food before you package it for sales? So your own handling now will now determine what happens to the food after. Your handling, your packaging, do you still use contaminated packaging material to package it? How did you store it? Under what condition? Was there light? Was there no light? So this will determine the kind of microflora, that is microorganisms, that will grow on the food. So on this table, we have some lists of some microorganisms that you can find in food. For the bacteria, the molds, the yeast, and protozoa. You know, mold and yeast are called fungi. They are fungi. But the yeast, you know, they are different from molds because mold forms hyphae and the yeast, they come in singles like that. For example, those yeast that you find in palm wine. So for bacteria, the kind of food we may find are also the kind of food that you may find even from the farm or from the handlers. For example, we have Acinetobacter, we have Enterobacter, we have Escherichia, Bacillus, Campylobacter, Clostridium, Lactobacillus, Listeria, Salmonella, Shigella, and all that. And you know all these Shigella, Yersinia, Salmonella, Listeria, Clostridium, Campylobacter, Escherichia, and Enterichia, they cause serious infection. They cause foodborne diseases. So we'll get there later. The molds, we have Aspergillus. That's a fungus. For example, Aspergillus can also release toxin into food. Then we have Alternaria, Botrytis, Cladosporium, Fusarium, Geotrichium, Mucor, Penicillium, Rhizopus, and Xeromyces. Penicillium and Mucor are useful organisms in the production of antibiotics like penicillin, penicillin. We'll get to that area, but we have a whole lot of them that when you give them the opportunity to cause diseases and infection, they will do so. Then we have the yeast, Candida, Saccharomyces. These two organisms are very useful in the industries. The same thing with Cryptococcus, Beta-Rhamyces, and Phlogemyces. But we also have some other organisms that can cause diseases. Protozoan, Cryptosporium palvum, Entamoeba, Histolytica, Giardia, Lyme, they're all very terrible disease-causing organisms. For example, Giardia and Cryptosporium, sometimes they can even affect the brain. Entamoeba histolytica can cause stooling and other diseases that we'll look at later. So, but what are the primary sources of microorganisms found in food? We have talked about their incidents, but how do they get into the food? Through water, soil and water. So, and how does it get to the soil? By urinating, by stooling. You know, when you stool on soil, for example, you know, when it rains, floods can carry it to other farms, other neighboring farms. They can carry it to the river, and some people will take that water and drink. So many of the bacteria and fungi that inhabit both soil and water share a lot in common because from the soil it gets to the water. Soil microorganisms may enter into the atmosphere by the action of wind and later enter water bodies when it rains and through flooding. Aquatic microorganisms can be deposited onto soil through action of cloud formation and rainfall. And some aquatic microorganisms are unable to persist in soil because of the environmental conditions. For example, there are organisms that can only live and survive in marine environment like the lagoon or the ocean, e.g. Ultramonas species. So if they find themselves in environment that lacks salt, they may not be able to grow and survive for long because they enjoy salinity, that is plenty of salt for their maintenance and growth. Some inhabit soil. Inhabitants of soil, some organisms that you can find in soil includes Bacillus, Clostridium, Streptomyces, and Corynebacterium. And those that you can find in water include Aeromonas, Otamromonas, Vibro, the Vibro that causes cholera, Escherichia, and Giardia lambda. Others which can inhabit both soil and water include Acetylobacter, Alkaligenes, Enterobacter, Escherichia, Erwinia, Pseudomonas, Yersinia, and Enterococcus. Apart from water and soil, organisms can also get to the food through plants and plant products. The microorganisms that persist on plant products can do so because they have the capacity to adhere themselves to the plant surface. So they are not easily washed away, and also because they are able to obtain their nutrients. When somebody pulls on the farm, the organism can stay on that plant because it's deriving nutrients for survival. because that place is suitable for its growth. And then they have capacity to adhere themselves to that plant. Otherwise, when it rains, they may be off. But when you now bring such a plant to the kitchen, you can do so by dislodging the organism, either through the addition of salt, vinegar, or by cooking appropriately. But when it comes to the food that must be eaten raw, like salad or vegetables that you will not cook so as such, so as not to lose the nutrient, you have to clean properly, maybe with salt and with vinegar. You sterilize them that way, or you blanch. So notable among microorganisms that inhabit plants and plant products include lactic acid bacteria and some yeast, and commonly associated with plants include Corynebacterium, Cortobacterium, Pseudomonas, Xanthomonas, and fungal pathogens. From the food utensils, you can also introduce microorganisms to the food. For example, I mentioned the case of our meat sellers in the market. They usually have their small table and chopping board. You discover that is the table and chopping board they will continue to, even if you go there for 10 years, 12 years, it's still the same chopping board. And over again, even when you go to cold room and where they are cutting fish and chicken, it is the same chopping board. So when you chop meat or fish, over and over again, microorganisms are accumulating on that chopping board. And then you buy your own fresh meat and they cut it there also, you carry some organism with your food items. Even in your house, you also have chopping board. Some people use the same chopping board they are using to cut fish and meat. When they want to cook salad, they also use the same chopping board. If you cut meat and fish raw in a chopping board, and you simply just use sponge to wash the chopping board and your knife, and then you use it for vegetable, how do you expect? And it's a salad that you will not cook. How would you expect yourself not to be infected? In my own house, we have a separate chopping board for raw food like meat and fish. We also have a separate chopping board and knife for fruit and vegetable. Everybody know you want to cook salad or you want to eat vegetable or your fruit, you go for the chopping board and the knife for vegetable. It is not the same thing. Even blender, we don't use the same. You should, because over time, no matter how you wash it, you are not going to autoclave it in your house. You are not going to put your blender in the oven. So the best thing is to design your kitchen in such a way that you don't have contamination. So that is why eating some of those things outside is very, very rare for me to eat salad outside, because you can never tell whether in that kitchen it is the same chopping board that they are using, the same knife and chopping board they are using for raw food like meat and fish that they are also using, to cut that same salad. So people believe that once they just use sponge and soap to wash it, it's out. No, it's not like that. If the fish or the meat or whatever that you are cutting is infected, definitely mere washing it with water and soap cannot sterilize it. You already know about sterilization. We also have intestinal tract of humans and animals. So example, salmonella, listeria, and all that. People go to toilets, they pass, excreta, and all they do. Some will not even remember to wash their hand. Some people that will remember will just rinse their hand with soap, with water. While some, the appropriate thing is for you to wash it, thoroughly with soap and water, and pick even your finger. That's why it's not good to keep long nails, because some of these fecal waste will go into the space of the finger, and they will be stored there. When you put that long nail inside your bag, and you introduce some of those organisms, and then you discover that after a while you are stooling, you are vomiting. So the intestinal tract of human and animals, when they are infected, they have pathogens like salmonella, like other people, and then they may infect the food if they don't wash their hands properly. Some people have skin diseases, some people have lice, some people have itchy on their head, they itch their head and they never go back to wash it. Neither did they use sanitizer to clean their hand, and they just handle fruits and everything, then they carry it and eat. The food handlers, the same thing, talk about other common sources that are common: nasal cavity, those that pick their nose with their hand; mouth, people that are talking. You are cooking, you are preparing food, you are talking, you are doing with salad, you are talking, you are doing ice cream and cake, you are talking. So there could be nasal cavity, mouth, skin, those from the gastrointestinal tract that may enter food through poor hygiene. Poor personal hygiene practices may lead to you contaminating the food as a food handler. It can also enter through animal feeds. When the feed of an animal is contaminated, for example, with Listeria monocytogenes, so the dairy, the meat from the animal will be contaminated. That is why it is advised that we boil our meat properly. And for those of you that like to eat, what is it called now that they do in parties now, that they will just roast the chicken. I've forgotten what you people call it. Is it whatever that they just serve? And sometimes you are cutting the chicken, you are still seeing some blood, and you are still going ahead to eat it. Must you eat it? You know, so if the animal is contaminated and the food is not properly cooked, the likelihood is that it will be transmitted to whoever eats it. If it is organism that can be transmitted from animal to human being. Then from animal hides, you know, we eat a lot of momo around here. Also, people like the Fulani people, even people that rear cattle en masse now, they milk the cow. What if the teat, that is the nipple of the cow, is infected? Some people don't even bother to clean the teats of the nipple of the cow before they milk. Some people will come with containers that are already dirty and not sterile to take the milk. So if you take that fura and nono that is contaminated, you are likely to have problem. Hair and dust can also be a source of organism, because the type of microorganisms in the hair and dust will be those that are constantly resided in the environment. So we can inhale it, we can give it out. For example, during COVID now, somebody cough and you are there and you pick it, that's the end. If I use my hand to cover my nose when I'm coughing or sneezing, some of the organism is introduced into my hand. I don't wash it, I don't use sanitizer. I use the hand to open the door to flush the toilet. Another person comes and then place their hand on that door, on that toilet flusher. They catch it. If they use it to rub their face or to rub their skin, they also catch it. It is this. So that is why constant washing of the hand is encouraged. And then you don't use your hand to cover your nose when you want to cough. You use your shoulder, your armpit to cover your nose when you want to cough. So let's look at microorganisms in food. You know, generally, we have food that may fall just under 3 types or 3 categories of food. Food can either be carbohydrates, for example, cereal, cassava, garri, and all the rice, bread, they are carbohydrate food. And they are always acted upon by carbohydrate fermenting microorganisms. When microorganisms ferment carbohydrates, what is the end product? The end product is acid, alcohol, and gases. Then you can also have proteinous foods, example, fish or meat or egg. And they are acted upon by proteolytic microorganisms, resulting in the production, that is the end product, called amino acid, amines, ammonia, or hydrogen sulfide. For the fatty foods like oil, butter, they are acted upon by lipolytic microorganisms, and the end products, when they are acted by lipolytic organisms, is fatty acid and glycerol. So on your own, find out 4 examples of microorganisms each that can act on carbohydrate, on protein, on fatty acid, and the enzymes they produce. What enzyme do they produce that can act on carbohydrate, that can act on protein to give us these end products that we are talking about? For example, fatty acid. An organism can produce lipase. Lipase is the enzyme. It breaks it down to fatty acid and glycerol. So you can find out others. Now let us classify food. Food can be classified into various types. You can have different means of classifying your food. So, but the physical and chemical characteristics of the food will determine the degree of its spoilage. That is, how susceptible are they to microbial activity will determine how quickly they will get spoiled. So on the basis of stability, because you can classify food on different bases, on the basis of stability to microbial attack, or according to the speed, how quickly the food can spoil, we can classify food into three. You know, we did a classification before based on the makeup of the food, the component of the food. Some can be carbohydrate, some can be protein, some can be fat and oil. But on the basis of how quickly they get spoiled, that is stability, we can classify them into three: perishable food, semi-perishable foods, stable or non-perishable foods. Perishable foods are those foods that spoils quickly. For example, meat, fish, chicken, that is poultry products, egg, milk, and others, and vegetable and fruits. They spoil quickly because they contain water. Containing plenty of water is an opportunity for bacteria to grow because bacteria survive where they have sufficient water. Semi-perishable food, those that spoil a bit less quickly. For example, nuts. For example, groundnuts. You can keep it in the bottle, you can keep it in a container, and for months, it will still be okay. Pears and apples cannot stay. If you don't have a fridge and you put your apple on the table, it can survive for a week, for 2 weeks, sometimes for 3 weeks, if you buy a healthy one. You cannot compare pear and apple, how you will store it, with the same way you will store watermelon or pineapple, for example, because those ones will spoil quickly. The stable or non-perishable foods are those that do not spoil when kept under normal storage condition. For example, cereals. If you store it very well, you know, in those days we used to have what they call the cocoa house. We have pyramids in the north. They store grains like pyramids for years. They try to save it for the rainy day. Nigeria don't have such things again. So if you don't allow water or moisture to your cereals, they will stay for as many years as possible. But when the place is humid, hot and humid, and then or waterlogged environment, maybe in your house, it is a waterlogged area, you see the wall wet, green and black, and then you place your bag of rice or corn on the floor, on the bare floor. Before you know it, half of the rice or grain would have clutched together. And then you start seeing different colors, black, green, orange, because fungus have infected it. Fungi need only little amount of moisture. Just humidity is enough for fungi to grow. It is bacteria that requires plenty of water for survival. So food like cereal, flour, sugar, they can stay for so long if you store them under normal condition. So this set of food categories differ largely with regard to moisture content, like I said, which is related to water activity that governs the spoilage of food by microorganisms. So we have, I don't know if you have another lecture, but we'll stop very soon. So we have different categories of food. We can also classify microorganisms on the basis of their activity. We have beneficial microorganisms, spoilage organisms, pathogenic organisms in food. The beneficial microorganisms are used in food production and fermentation. The spoilage organisms cause spoilage or deterioration in food quality, while the pathogenic microorganism causes foodborne diseases. So this is a good point to stop, but if you don't have another lecture, but I think we should just stop here, because if I start talking about this, then we might stay for a bit longer. Talking about beneficial microorganisms in food. Microorganisms are exploited or used in food industry to produce desirable food products and enhance the quality of food. For example, the lactic acid bacteria, they are used in the production of yogurt, cheese, and other fermented dairy products. Example of such organism is lactobacillus, streptococcus, and liconostoc. We also have the fungi category like yeast, used in baking, brewing, and winemaking. Example, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Then we have the molds that are used in cheese production. For example, Penicillium roqueforti, that is used in production of blue cheese. We have other beneficial microorganisms in food. For example, in beer production, you can use Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Saccharomyces calbengensis, or Saccharomyces rubarium. What are their role in food? What's the role of these microorganisms that I just mentioned? They convert sugar to alcohol. The alcohol is the beer, and then carbon dioxide is the other product. They produce changes in proteins and other components that modify the flavor of the beer. That is why when you pick lager beer, for example, the lager beer for brewery, I think is Star Lager. I can't remember the name of the beer category for Guinness. Whoever knows it should unmute and tell me. So you will discover that they all have their secrets. They know which strain of organisms they are using. Star Lager, there's no company here in Nigeria that has beaten Star Lager to it. Guinness try as much as possible to produce beer to taste like lager, Star Lager, but it did not taste the same. I can't remember the name of the beer for that Guinness is, the Guinness people produce. But when it comes to stouts, you will discover that even though Nigerian breweries that produce very good beer at the Star are unable to beat Guinness with their stout. They produce, the NBL produced Legend. The Legend, for those who take beer, they said that Legend is not as good as stout. They have secrets. They have their trade secrets. And that is why their brewers, you can hardly see them going from one company to another. They always keep their brewer as much as possible because those are the people that have the strain of microorganisms in their hand. So they pay them well because if they get out with the secret, they are able to go to any other company and sell the secret to the company. So while NBL, Nigerian Brewery, is able to produce good lager beer, they are unable to beat the stout of Guinness. Everything depends on the strain of microorganisms they are using for their fermentation that changes or modify the flavor of their products. For palm wine, for example, you have mixed strains of Saccharomyces and Candida species. So for palm wine, you have Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Candida species, Schizosaccharomyces bombay, and then Lactulose species. This is what scientists have studied. If you take palm wine and you analyze it, you will find this organism. But these organisms are not organisms that causes infection. But depending on your container and how you handle your palm wine, organisms that will cause pathogenic organisms can now come in depending on how you handle it. So what is the role of these organisms in this palm wine? They ferment the palm wine juice. If you take fresh palm wine, it is sweet. But after like 1 or 2 hours, it is starting to ferment, and then it changes to alcohol. Cheese. For cheese, the microorganisms that are used include Brevibacterium lineens, Penicillium roqueforti, Streptococcus salivarius subspecies Thermophilus. And what do these microorganisms do? They ripen the cheese. They help in the ripening of cheese. Then for the wine, Saccharomyces ellipsoides of different strains, and then Saccharomyces uveus and Saccharomyces oviformis are the microorganisms that are used in wine production mostly. and they convert sugar to alcohol and also might modify the flavor. So I would like to stop here because food is a very long one. So I would like to stop here. So when next you meet, we meet. So do well to remind me that we stopped at spoilage microorganisms in food. Thank you. Any question? Okay, so you kept saying you
Good
need my.
morning, ma'am.
I'm not the owner of the module. You have to go to your coordinator in DLI to buy your module. They have module there, and then you can purchase it and read. But for me, I upload your notes on the website. So if you have visited the LMS, you will see my slides and the notes there. So, but if you want the modules, then you go to DLI, purchase your module. So no question. Any question, please?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Question.
Who is talking? David?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Thanks so much,
Noise.
ma'am, for the class. Yeah,
I
I
can't
wanted to
stand this
ask.
noise. Whoever is talking should mute.
Okay. Hello,
Many
ma'am. Can you
people
hear me,
are
ma'am?
talking. All right.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah, I wanted to ask that if I have different shopping board for different raw food, does that mean that
I did not say that you should have different chopping board for different raw food. For heaven's sake, you have thousands of raw food. That was not what I said.
yes, ma'am. I just want to pick out some things there that
I
let's assume
mentioned
that
for raw foods like meats,
yes,
chicken,
meat of yes,
those
vegetable.
fish. If you
Yes,
cut fish, okay, imagine you go to the market and you buy Titus or you buy
yes, ma'am.
Kote
Yes,
with
ma'am.
all the blood and you cut it, and you also want to eat salad, and you simply take that chopping board and the same knife and you just rinse it or wash it, and then you cut your salad, rinse it, and then you begin to eat. Even the smell of the fish, won't you smell it there?
Yes, I will, ma'am. Yes, that's what
Exactly.
I'm.
It's just
Okay,
an
ma'am.
advice. You don't have to take to it, okay?
Oh, okay,
I
ma'am.
just
Okay, ma'am.
want to know that when you keep using the same chopping board and the same knife, after a while, organisms will know.
It
If
be
you look
attached.
at your knife very well, the edge of your knife, that handle side, you see that no
Yes,
matter
ma'am.
how you try to wash it, those
Be
things
black.
are just there, black.
Yes, yes. It's true,
All
ma'am.
right. And you cannot
Okay, ma'am.
sterilize them. You can't carry your knife and go and be looking for autoclave. So for me, the
Yes,
best thing is for me to just say, oh, this one, everybody in the house knows that when they want to cut apple or cut orange, they know which knife to keep, to
to
pick,
pick.
and they are not kept in the same place.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes. One more question, please.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Who is talking? Donatus is
Ma,
talking.
I
I
have a
can't.
question
Who is
regarding.
talking?
Hello,
Samuel
ma.
is
Can you hear
talking.
me, ma?
Donatus is talking. I will go out of this place now if you don't control yourself. Who wants to
Good-
talk? One person
It's
at a
me, ma'am.
time.
Good
Who is
morning, ma'am.
what's your name?
Don't have to Seriata, ma'am.
Donatus. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Ma, you were talking about this semi-perishable food. So I was lost. I didn't know what you said there. So I want to
So I should
have
repeat
more.
everything I said there.
Yes, ma'am.
I should repeat it.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
will not
Sorry, ma'am.
repeat it. You will read it
Okay,
from
ma'am.
your notes. All right. Have a nice day.
Ma, I
Okay,
have a
ma'am.
question. I have a
Who is
question, ma.
talking? Samuel.
Yes, ma.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, ma. Ma, you were saying something regarding raw meat. So you said that microorganisms could be found in raw meat.
I cannot hear you, Samuel.
Hello, ma. Can you hear me, ma?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you, ma. So I said you were saying something regarding raw meat, and you said some
Regarding
microorganisms
what?
could raw meat.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes, and you said some microorganisms, the ones that are harmful, could be found inside the raw meat. Now, I want to ask a question, ma, and that is why they should be thoroughly washed and cooked as well properly. So I want to ask a question. How about suya that is being smoked, that has passed through some temperature, heat temperature? like, is it okay? Does it mean that the microorganisms there has died, or are we still going to have some that we are going to take, the harmful ones that we are going to take inside our body when we consume it?
I don't know what you are talking about, but I don't know which kind of food because I can barely hear you. But it depends on the kind of food you are talking about. If you are talking about fish meat, thoroughly cook your fish and meat. That is what is being said. But food like vegetable and fruits, whereby you cannot thoroughly cook because you want to maintain the nutrient, you have to sterilize them. And I mentioned the use of vinegar or salt for sterilization. Thank you very much. So have a nice day.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Same to you, man.
Thank you very much. God bless you.